is a hallmark of agility. So Jim, I'm going to pass it over to you now.
Thanks, Layla, for really giving us a good definition of agile and business ability. Every time I hear you provide that explanation, I learn a little bit more. So fantastic. It's fairly new to a lot of us, so thank you so much. What I like to do on Saturday afternoons is kind of hang around and fly, except I'm in my living room watching it on TV. But if you've ever seen these wingsuit guys flying in the air, they have figured out their agility and visibility, and they are stable. And being able to do this over and over again, I guess they're resilient because they're still alive. So the reason I put this chart together is, or this picture together, is because agility and visibility and stability, we talk a lot about all three of those, and there are arguments on which goes first, what comes second, what comes third. There are certainly arguments to say agility comes first before visibility. You have to know how to make decisions. So when you are visible, you know what to do with that visibility of data. And stability, you could argue, comes first. Like in COVID, you say, I want to stabilize the patient. But at the same time, if you're not agile enough in your supply chain to make sure that the hospital doctors and nurses have the information, the materials that they need, you may never get somebody to become stable. So I don't think it really matters which of these comes first. I think what matters is these are things that you need to work on. So with that, I'm going to go into the next section, which is what is the enterprise resiliency, the business case for resiliency, and why resiliency matters. So first, we'll kick off with what is enterprise resiliency. We go back to our definitions with Yossi Sheffi, who wrote a number of books on this since 2005. So this is not a new concept. Building a resilient enterprise should be a strategic initiative that changes the way a company operates and increases competitive. So reducing the vulnerability means that both reducing the likelihood of a disruption and increasing resilience, so that resilience in turn can be achieved by either creating redundancy or increasing flexibility. So you kind of have a, well, we're going to create redundancy, increase flexibility, but we got to do that not at any cost, right? We have to figure out a way that that it can be managed in any case of a disruption. So when you don't have a disruption, what does the norm look like? After a disruption, what does the norm look like? With COVID-D, we all know that after this disruption, there's going to be the new normal. We haven't defined what that new normal is to this day. And because we haven't defined it, there's a lot of uncertainty out there. And as Greg would testify, who wrote the book with Dr. Trent, it generally takes 20 to 40 weeks after a major disruption for full recovery. So we can look forward to these next weeks. We're very early in it. We're just hitting the tip of the iceberg here with COVID. So the resilient enterprise definition by Greg from a supply chain perspective and Dr. Trent is centered around having the capacity to overcome disruptions and continually transform itself by meeting the changing needs and expectations of its customers, shareholders, and stakeholders. So excellent definition by Greg. So we'll move on from there. And so when we look at the business case for resiliency, there's organizational challenges and there's actions we can take. So some of the challenges we may have today is leaders that embrace change. And in order to, the most common actions for that is that sustained, committed vision, and the lead with empowerment. So when we heard Layla discuss agility, talked a lot about empowering the decisions and having clear decision paths. So a lot of commonality here as a requirement for resiliency. Reliance on past successes is often a challenge. We can't get out of our own way. So an action that can be taken is, of course, gain that real-time visibility for opportunities and build those caselets for change. Another area to focus on organizational challenges is asset protection. And asset protection is referring to focusing on our assets, so we take our eye off the ball and we become a little bit behind our competitors. So what we can do proactively is engage in change and view risk as an opportunity for growth. The next one here is centered around pillars of power. A lot of companies have pillars of power, whether it's in manufacturing and engineering, or between different divisions, or between sales reps who are selling a certain product line. Sometimes the end customer may see two sales reps from the same company, and they're competing against each other. So the improvements that I've seen or actions I've seen around that is co-location in the manufacturing, and then in the sales area is owning each other's metrics or owning a piece. So I'll never forget the time where I had to own helping another sales rep make their number. So that always made for some interesting things. So in the end, it really helped drive the right message across the organization. The next is leveraging data as an asset. Very often we don't treat data as an asset. One of the actions that can be taken is have a corporate data officer or risk officer. That would send a message to the organization on the importance of data. And then the last item on the list is stagnated dashboards. Very often we are, with Power BI, we have all these dashboards out there and we're recording them, but we're not doing anything with them. So we really need to work on developing evolving performance targets that change as the organization changes. All of our enterprises are really living ecosystems. It's not a static environment, it's always moving. So if our targets are the same and they don't take into account changes in the enterprise and the outside, the environmental impacts as well as the internal impacts, then our targets we're not focusing on the right objectives. Okay, next slide, thanks. So another concept that we discussed last webinar was on why resiliency matters. And as we discussed, it comes down to time and money. And as we look at the top graph there, where we have value of the organization versus elapsed time, you can liken that to the COVID crisis that we're having right now. Is the later we respond, the bigger the impact, and you're in the red, the bottom. If you have early detection in those countries that proactively detect, proactively take action, whatever those actions might be, you're going to see less of a dip there. And the other thing that you'll notice is on the right side there, or you may be able to see it, the velocity of change, or the value of change there. That value can be greatly increased if you are able to navigate prior to others. So you see Dyson, you see certain companies taking advantage of this and the COVID crisis and getting a bigger piece of the pie. And they're being resilient, they're being agile by changing the way that they manage their products. And so now they're making products they've never made before. So something to keep in mind is that, time and money. the $4 million is an average cost of $2014 by the Insurance Newsnet. And as you can see, $4 million, that's almost like the cost of doing business. And that $4 million is hitting your bottom line. So the question is, are we going to accept that $4 million to our bottom line every year due to risk events, or are we going to proactively manage those as what's above by managing that time to recovery? Okay, Layla? So the next slide is, why even spend any time on this resiliency thing? So we want to identify, assess, and mitigate a risk faster than your nearest competitor, so you can have that strategic advantage. That's pretty straightforward. Again, it's all relative to your competitor. The next is proactive planning protocols can lead to reduced insurance premium. We're going to see a real big adjustment of insurance premiums after this COVID-D. And the companies that have proactive planning and show that they were able to perform those are going to come out on top. And that's going to show up in the premiums going forward. Good reactive responsiveness is the next one. To a risk event can lead to additional revenue and share. I don't think I'm saying anything that's going to be a secret here, but we're going to have a lot of divestitures. We're going to have bankruptcies, and the M&D market is going to explode after this with reallocation of companies. So for better or worse, it's going to happen. So the last bullet here ties in the agility segment of integrating agility practices increases the key stakeholder awareness and capabilities to think on their feet, leading to real-time benefits in the event of disruptions. So that kind of pulls us together on why spend time on resiliency. With that, we'll just conclude with our resilient enterprise slide that our consortium has. Working left to right, we enable an end-to-end vision. And again, we start with organizational empowerment as a key vision through visibility, stakeholder analytics, so we're getting value-based analytics so we can optimize the value proposition using operational excellence, agile principles, and risk management so we can get that sustained margin growth. And how do we do it? We have a software as a service and consulting group of 20 companies, 20 plus companies that focus on end-to-end transactional visibility, production visibility, supply chain visibility, and obtaining business needs intelligence through visibility. And then of course, the process mining, the robotics process automation, business process automation, and artificial intelligence. We have companies that specialize in deploying and performing those tasks to enable our clients to be on their own and build their own resilient enterprise at their pace, in their way. So Layla, you want to finish us up here?